Hi there, it's Jeff. This little video is going to be on dust extraction systems, or removing dust from around in your workshop, and I'm going to show you the difference between Shopvacs and a dust extraction system and what I've used in my workshop to help, and just to get rid of that dust that's in your workshop using your power tools and just your machinery as well, and what works best for me, which might work for you. So keep watching, and I'm going to go through these systems with you step by step, and this may help you if you're thinking about setting up a system in your workshop, or if you're thinking about purchasing a vacuum for your workshop, that for your tools or so on. So let's get to it. Okay, let's get down to the basics. So your two basic categories here of removing dust within your workshop or your workplace is going to come down to either a Shopvac type of setup, something like this, or a large dust extraction system, something like a 1.5 to 2 horsepower, maybe 2.5 horsepower unit that is usually plumbed in your workshop through ducting or some of that flexible hosing. Now with your Shopvacs, it is possible to sort of use a Shopvac around in your workplace solely as for removing your dust. Most of them are portable, like on wheels and so on. And your Shopvacs are basically a high volume unit with but high pressure. So when it comes to Shopvacs, they're usually going to be in some sort of a similar diameter hose setup as this. It will suck dust, but close up, and it's because of the pressure that's with these this type of system. So I wouldn't recommend, if you're setting up static machines such as your panel saw or cabinet saw, if you've got a planer unit, with large chips type of thing. Not ideal so much with these smaller units. That's probably where you want to go with the bigger units, such as the dust extraction system. Another thing you should probably need to sort of consider with these smaller vac units is something that has a filter in them, or good sort of a HEPA filter that when it does suck the dust through, the air coming out of it is sort of filtered, especially that fine stuff. So most of them do sort of have a filter setup. This one here has a filter cartridge which can be removed and replaced as well. So think about something like that when you are picking, or choosing a little Shopvac. I'm not promoting any brand or anything, but what I use is just something like this little one here. You can plug in, I use this all the time when I'm using my track saw in the workplace, my electric planer, which lets off a lot of fine dust when I'm doing fillers and so on. It's portable, obviously, so if I do have to go on site or working around in the house, I can take this with me. Regardless of, I have both systems, it is good to have a good Shopvac. So some of those things to consider. These things, some of these have a port here for your power, where it automatic start for your track saw or your power tool. As soon as you turn it on, the vacuum starts with it. Now I know that you can get automatic power remotes type of setup that will do the same sort of thing as well, but something like that. And if you are using a little Shopvac like this to run for your workshop as well, you probably might want to consider some sort of a cyclonic unit or attachment to your vacuum. This particular brand one that I have has a cyclonic unit, which I normally leave attached when I am using the track saw and so on. They are kind of handy because all the fine stuff goes, the big stuff, sorry, I should say, bypasses your filter bag, which in long term helps with that longevity of your bag. But I did do a video on bag systems associated with this particular vac, on how to reuse your Shopvac bag, so you can get more life out of it. If you are interested, I'll leave the description and the post in that one as well. But definitely, I would definitely consider some sort of a cyclonic unit attachment for your shop vac if you are using that a lot in your workshop and as your main sole source of removing dust from your machines, or especially your power tools. So the other thing you probably need to look at as well is the noise. So these vacuums can get quite noisy. We'll go into the dust extraction system one later, but they are noisy too. But you probably want to look out and see how noisy these things are as well. They can get quite noisy. With the dust extraction system, they work on a high volume of air with low pressure. So they are really good for getting your big chips out of like your table saw, cabinet saws, your planers, joiners, things are going to make a lot of big chips and big volume of mess. So they are really good, hence why they have really good suction, and you can get a lot, and obviously why you can get away with your larger 4-inch pipe work, or 1 inch. So you would be connecting these all around the place. Now we'll go have a look at some of the dust extraction ducting that I've done with my one and my unit. I've just used PVC pipe, just at local hardware. It's PVC pipe, plumbing pipe. I've just opted for PVC pipe running around because it's relatively cheap, easy to work with. I haven't had any problems with static with mine that I noticed. It's been quite good. I've made my own blast gates just out of plywood. Nothing fancy, but yeah, just out of plywood. I haven't bought the plastic ones or anything. I've just made my own, just using some PVC fittings and some glue, PVA glue. I bought these fittings at the bottom here, so on my rubber hose here, these just turn on here on the pipe, this thread on, and they're rubber flexible fitting, and they just fit nice and comfortably on the pipe there, and away you go. So I usually have this length of, I think, about 2.5 meter of pipe laying around in my workshop, so in case I want to put it close by. Sometimes I can't connect a dust hose to my trimmer or something for various reasons. If I'm doing a circle or something like that, it's really hard to sort of twist around. I'll just put this nearby. And the other thing I do in my workshop, which helps a lot, is run some fans. Now they're just screwed onto my workshop in various places. I've got 2 of them set up, one sort of facing the saw to get the dust away from the saw outside, and another one on top of my bench here, which blows out the door. As they're all facing to go out the garage door. So a fan nearby can also help in just blowing that dust out of your face and sort of outside, obviously, along with using a good respirator. If you don't have adequate fans or stuff like that, you can just use a good dust respirator to also help with the dust. But as far as an air filter in my workshop, I don't have one. I just rely on some fans as well, which blows it out, which works fine for me. So yeah, removing your dust from your my cabinet saw, drill press, things like that, I use my dust extraction system. Mine is a 2 horsepower unit, and I would strongly recommend something as minimum as a 2 horsepower unit if you are connecting it to your like cabinet saw, because your cabinet saw needs to, you need to get that dust out from when it's you working in higher RPM, get that dust away. You want to have a dust extraction over your guard or your blade guard through that as well. My one is reduced down to 80 mil on the top for my cabinet saw, and I've made a homemade guard out of Perspex, which I connect that hose to as well, which gets a lot of that dust away. but the majority of the dust collection is underneath in the 4-inch connection of the cabinet saw, for example. So with my dust extraction system, the only difference is, instead of it being on a mobile base, I've actually mounted it to my wall, as you can see, just so it's out of the way. And I haven't got any fancy dust deputy or cyclonic unit on that. I've just got a bag on the bottom. I reuse that bag, but just being in a small workshop in here, and my dust usually has to go in the garbage bin. I usually fill that bag to about quarter full, no more, and I empty that into like garbage bags, and I put that in my garbage bin, and I basically recycle that plastic bag that's on it. I don't see any need to throw that out every time. It's reuse. I just reuse it. The other thing I did upgrade on that though is the filter cartridge on the top there. It's a pleated, I think it's called a pleated filter cartridge, and that helps with recycling of the dust that's going through it. Obviously the dust has to keep going somewhere, and it goes through that filter. They're good, those things, because you can self-clean them. They've got an arm on the top which you turn. Inside it has rubber flaps which scrape along those pleated filters and just shaking the dust till it drops into the bag. And yeah, that works really well. It breaks, that releases the air back into your workshop at 0.5 microns or something fine like that, as opposed to a dust bag, which is the basic setup you get when you buy one of these dust extraction systems. Now my unit is a fair few years old. It's probably 25-30 years old. I bought it secondhand from someone, but it still does the job, and it runs on a remote setup, remote power point type of thing. So I have a couple of those hanging around the workshop, especially one near my saw. So when I'm about to use a saw, I turn it on, and then after I've turned the saw on. You've also got to consider too, I guess, with these things, is that the power that these use. Now I've done some tests on this little Shopvac, and this running works on around about 5.5 amps, which isn't too bad, whereas the dust extraction system runs on at least 7.5 amps, which uses a little bit more power. So depending on your workshop as well and what you've got running at the time. So if you're running something like that dust extraction system and a cabinet saw, like a 3 horsepower cabinet saw, you're going to have to be pulling a fair few amps, of power. So you want to be careful that you're not going to trip your circuit or anything like that. You make sure your circuits are designed to cope with a bit of power there. So hence the noise that the dust extraction system makes on the bigger horsepower units. The bigger the horsepower or the CFM that they suck, obviously of the volume. These 2 horsepower units are running roughly around about 1200 CFM, something like that. And like I mentioned before, that's roughly what you're sort of going to want as a minimum if you can, if you've got if you're running a decent cabinet saw and other power tools or static machines as well for the dust extraction system. And one other thing, the other thing I do have close by, which is handy in just blowing some of the dust out as well. Usually when you're finished, if there's a bit of dust around on the floor, I generally vacuum it up with this Shopvac, which is good. But I also have handy just some sort of a little battery powered blower. And these are handy too, just to blow a bit of the dust out, just out the door in your workshop sometimes, or blowing the bench down or the power saw or cabinet saw, sorry. Also with that, I usually have the air compressor and I blow it as well, but sometimes just to blow the air out with a blower or something. Or you can use these, they have an outlet as well where you can connect the hose and blow air out too, just to blow some dust out the door sometimes. But generally, to wrap things up, if you can, it's good to have a little bit of both, but if you are considering one or the other, just take those things into consideration. What I've just gone through, the little Shopvac type of setup like this, they can be quite expensive, and so can the dust extraction system. So sometimes it's kind of, you have to decide one or the other, or if you can sort of afford that luxury of both, it's great. But the shop vacs are good to, you know, maneuver around the workshop, take with you on site. That's all those advantages. They can blow air as well, get something with, you know, filtration as well that's going back into the air. The good thing is they have attachments, and they are really good for connecting to, you know, a lot of your power tools like your planers, your track saw, etc. Whereas something like this connected to your cabinet saw, I did do it in the past when I first started out. They do struggle. They won't keep up as good as something like a 2 horsepower dust extraction system set up for your saw. So that was the main thing that led me to purchase something like a bigger horsepower dust extraction unit, was the cabinet saw, just to get that dust out of the way for the cabinet saw. And then I did the plumbing and the ducting all around the place and just ran it so it also does, you know, there's an outlet there for when I drill press, if you're doing, you know, drilling with the drill press as well. And it's also good to have some ports around the place just to pick up dust if you want to with a hose, which works really well. Well, that just about wraps up this video on the dust extraction systems and what I've used, and hopefully you might be able to get something out of this if you're thinking about doing something in your workshop, or think about purchasing a shop vac or upgrading. It may help you with those decisions. So hopefully you like this video. Thumbs up if you did. Share. Please subscribe so you can keep up to date with the latest videos that are coming out. And hopefully I will see you in one of my next videos.